stately home. That's evolutionary action.
It just happened.
By this famous guy, Carl Sagan. He was very much an anti-religious person, and both his thought and his deed. And he worked very hard in his lifetime to actually destroy faith in God, and he did the best he could. The question was, did the universe? This is one of the problems that he had to deal with. In order to self-cause itself, for the universe to self-cause itself, it would have to not exist to cause existence, and then exist in order to be caused. So he has a slight problem here, both at the same time. And that goes against another special law, scientific law. It's called the law of non-contradiction. And basically that phrase there contradicts itself, and therefore is untrue. That's the argument, okay? So whatever he said here, whatever he thought here, it just couldn't be. And we understand that. The law of cause and effect states that every material effect must have an adequate cause that existed before the effect. And the key word is the word adequate. For example, a healthy rooted tree does not fall over because a fly runs into it. Okay? A fly bumping into a tree is not going to be a big enough cause for it to be unrooted. You've got to have a hurricane, or you've got to have a bulldozer to build down a tree, or a jolly green giant. A juggernaut. A fly running into it isn't. So we can know rationally. A tree fell over. It wasn't a fly that did it. All right.
Has anybody ever seen a fly
running into a tree? Well, let's just say use that as something it's small and
you've got to imagine it.
I don't know. Maybe drunk. An encyclopedia is not produced by spilling ink onto a stack of paper. I mean, that's just a self-evident factor. There's no way you're going to write a book or never mind an encyclopedia just by spilling ink over a bunch of paper. Then when you shake out the paper, all these words fall like that, do you? No, it's not going to happen. These are not adequate causes. For whatever effect we see, we must present an adequate cause. Law of cause and self-state, okay? If the existence of a cosmos as a whole needs to be explained, and if it cannot be explained by natural causes, then by reasonable deduction, then there must be a supernatural cause. We must look to the existence and action of a supernatural cause for its explanation. And that's what we say, we exist, the world exists, is very complex, and the more we understand the world and see the complexity of the world, the more we're driven to the fact that there's got to be something huge mind behind this. It's got to be super intelligent to be able to produce this. We think we're clever. I produced a car, and when it breaks down, we always, we complain. But you look at the human body and the universe, you talk about complexity is absolutely amazing, and far better than what we can do. I said last week about this dawn of time, according to them. In this first fraction of a second, so much happened that actually it was outside of, for example, the speed of light theory that we now accept, and all science accepts. So back here is something that's happening at such tremendous speed. So then when they look at the universe and say, well, it's so far apart and doing this, that, next thing, it must have been so many billion years needed to do that. We implied last week that no, God built time in. And therefore you can't look at the universe and say, I know how old the universe is, because we don't know how long or what God did in the first couple of milliseconds to create the built-in time. So there's no real point of reference, and neither are they. This is all speculation. What we do know from the Bible is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. The earth was without form and void, darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. From Genesis 1 we have a progressive, a very simple statement about how the universe came into being. And the thing is, in reality, the existence of the universe, it's almost parallel to what we have here. What's the difference between saying God spoke and it came into existence and all these things happened in those first 6 days, and the evolutionist concept, there's a big bang, and all these things happened in the first couple of milliseconds. There's not a lot of difference there. Because we know, we can see something must have happened, it must have happened quickly. The rationale behind it, you're talking about the end product we see, the reasons why that end product exists is very similar. God spoke, or a big bang. You know, it's happening just like that. So it's very similar. Nehemiah said, "You alone are Lord, you have made heaven, the heaven of heavens with all their hosts. The earth and everything in it, the seas, all that is in them, and He preserved them all. The host of the heavens worship Him." If we had more time, we could actually look at what a little things that are almost overlooked in some of these phrases. For example, you preserve them all. We look out at the heavens, and it's all. We can measure stuff. We can send stuff out years ahead and know exactly where it's going to be, because there's a consistency in that, and that's implied by the writer there. The psalmist is all blown away. He says, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament shows His handiwork." This is the God we're dealing with. He says, you look at the power, the majesty, the glory, and then that's God's work. So, Psalm 8 says, "When I consider the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, by the word of the Lord the heavens were made, all the hosts, and by the breath of His mouth. For He spoke and it was done. He commanded and it stood fast." A lot of people who reject Genesis 1 don't realise that by rejecting Genesis 1 and trying to fit evolution into God's plan in the first millennia, if you like, you've got to reject all these other passages in the Bible that mention God speaking, God creating, God preparing everything. So you're not just trying to get rid of Genesis 1, you're trying to get rid of loads of parts of the Bible in order to make the theory of evolution fit in their thinking. And this is a beauty. This is, I think, lots of people say, the first 24 hours in creation, a day. You people who believe the Bible said it was a literal day. No, we want to jump Genesis 1. But at the same time, even religious people who want to jump Genesis 1 are quite happy to accept the Ten Commandments. And yet He writes back in the beginning of the Ten Commandments, you got, "For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and earth, and the seas and all is in them, and He rested the seventh day." So even Genesis, even Exodus, if you're going to get rid of Genesis 1, you've got to then go through the rest of the Bible and tear out all the bits that back up Genesis 1, because all the rest of the Bible does back up Genesis 1. And that's where a lot of people who would like to be religious want to slot evolution in. That's the big problem they have, because you're not just getting rid of Genesis 1, you're getting rid of loads of stuff. And the implication of that is obviously too much. Big Bang, well known as Big Bang Theory. Usually explosions cause disorder and not order. That's an oxymoron. I mean, it's just a basic understanding. It's just the way it is. Here you are, the Home Depot, and a beautiful American place there. And all of a sudden there's a huge explosion. Goodness gracious me, what are you going to have left? Rubble, obviously, aren't you? No. According to evolution, when the explosion is over, you have a beautiful house. You have improved from a Home Depot, a store, a bits and pieces store, into a beautiful, stately home. That's evolutionary action.
It just happened.
It just happened.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Wow.
And that's, at the end of the day, that's why, for me, it is far more reasonable and logical to believe in God than it is to believe what evolution is wanting you to understand. Now, we can get into the middle bit. Variation. Birds with bigger beaks and smaller beaks and all different ways and stuff like that. You can get into all that if you want. But before you even get that far, you've got to ask these questions.
Answer them.
And answer these questions. She's asking questions. You've got to answer those questions. But they don't want to answer these questions. These are difficult questions. They just assume that all that takes place, and they end up with birds in the first place, And if you look at some of their reason how they even brought birds about, that's quite amazing in itself. And then they just say, oh, look at all the different changes, so therefore evolution must exist. But we look at the same thing, we're saying the same, we believe in evolution, but we don't believe in billions of years evolution. We believe in variation of the species. We don't believe in a depot turned into a stately home. And we don't believe a lion is going to turn into an elephant, which at the end of the day you must have. When you look at something like this, very simple thing, the Mount Rushmore, 4 presidents all suddenly appears in the mountains there. Well, obviously, it just happened by chance. It was an earthquake, wasn't it? And all of a sudden, these 4 faces appeared out of the mountains. I don't think so. You know, they climbed up Mount Snowdon, Mount Everest, and any big mountains these days. There's hundreds of people. It's like a holiday resort. You've got them climbing up there practically every day of the week. But if you were a fast person up there at the top, and you found a little doll at the very top, and you thought you were a fast person here, what do you think? Isn't evolution wonderful? Produced a doll like that in the middle of nowhere, up here, in the middle of the top of a mountain? No, you think, goodness, it must have fallen from a plane, or somebody's been here. You don't think that's suddenly evolved, because that just wouldn't even come in your mind. And so, Mount Rushmore, was it intelligent design? Wait a minute. Yeah, right enough. In religious circles, we've used the watch design for many, like 100 years really. The law of cause effect states that every material effect must have an either the cause or just for a watch. Okay, if you find a watch lying on the beach, you wouldn't think, wow, isn't evolution wonderful? You think somebody dropped the watch. You know, it just doesn't make sense for that just to happen. And if you had an explosion in a metal factory, there's no way that you'd end up in a watch. You know, it just doesn't make sense. And yet they can bypass all that, they can see it all. Matter of fact, the next slide, in response to the concept of the religious people saying, look, you know, you can see the design of the watch, why can't you see the design of man? You can see the design of the watch, why can't you see the design of the universe? Well, Dawkins is probably in our day and age, is one of the most prolific writers and speakers on the behalf of evolution. And he's anti-God down to his back teeth, okay? So he writes a book, he says, it's a blind watchmaker. Blind, why the evidence of evolution? Now, part of his statements, he says, even the most ardent atheist can see that design is all around us. The Christian design we see all around us is totally consistent with the Bible's explanation, because God's a designer. So therefore, we think, if God's a designer, it's not a problem for him to design. One of the great arguments down through time that people have always argued against the Bible is the fact that the Bible talks sometimes about miracles. But if you believe in Genesis 1, the miracle of creation, if you have a God who is capable of creating in that way, then the other miracles you read about in the Bible are a piece of cake. You know, if God can do this, He can allow His Son to be born to a woman. If God can do this, He can heal people. If God can do this, He can do all sorts of stuff. Because we accept that the God that we worship is a God who is a creator. He's a mathematician. He's a designer. He's an architect. He's brilliant.
There's a true story about Strasbourg Cathedral clock, which is probably one of the most complicated clocks on earth. The chap who designed it and who built it got into a problem with the Strasbourg authorities. They declined to pay him his money. So he came along and he did something to the clock. Now this is quite true. They got all the clock designers, all the watchmakers that they knew, all the mechanics and the engineers to come along to fix the clock. They couldn't do it. So they decided they better make peace with him. They called him in and they paid him, so he went along and touched the thing, started up. Now that actually happened.
Yeah. See,
the man who made it knows how it works.
That's right. And it's there. This guy, in his book, his argument is this. He says, it's interesting how he says this, he says, all appearances to the contrary. That means, when you look at things, they imply there must be a God behind them, but really it can't imply that because I don't believe in God. He says the only watchmaker in nature is the blind forces of physics, albeit deployed in a very special way. Who's deploying physics in a very special way? He's not answering those questions, but his very terminology he uses is showing he's struggling to come up with an answer. A true watchman has foresight. He designs his cogs, his springs, he plans their interconnections with a future purpose in his mind's eye. Okay? The rest of his statement goes on. Natural selection is the blind, unconscious, automatic process which Darwin discovered, and which we now know is the explanation for the existence and apparently purposeful form of all life. Has no exception and has no purpose in mind. So, even though everything points to the fact that life has a purpose, that the satellites and the stars and the moon and all this sort of stuff seems to go in some sort of design and set pattern, he says, even though it looks like that, it can't really be like that, because I don't believe it. It just happened by chance.
Doesn't understand it.
You know? And this is one of the guys who's one of the most prolific in our people. So when you read that, he says he has no mind, it does not plan for the future, it is a blind watchmaker.
I don't know why he uses the watch illustration.
Well, as in response to ours.
Well,
Because if you go back the first couple there.
yeah. No, but tell you why though.
Oh, why?
That,
Sorry.
that illustration was used over 300 years ago by William Paley
That's right.
in his natural, in his,
Yeah.
and he said you're walking across a field and your foot kicked against something you've never seen a watch. You picked this thing up and you saw that it had fingers on a dial, and you opened it up and it had springs and everything in. He said this didn't happen by chance.
Yeah.
Somebody made this.
That's right.
And it's the way you notice that the fingers came round to the same place at the same time every day. They'd say not only did he make it, but he had a purpose.
Yeah.
That was to tell the time. Now he stopped halfway through the illustration.
That's right. That's right. Because he said, no, when you kick that thing in the field, when you
Yeah.
pick it up in the
Tell the
field,
watch.
and you see all this stuff, he says, it just
Doesn't
happened.
happen. Yeah, but
Okay, well, but that's, and he's write a whole book about it. Okay, so anyway, Milky Way, its diameter 100,000 light years, thickness is a nucleus 20,000 light years, is a disk 20,000 light years, number of stars at least 1 million, something like that, or whatever. Now, we use the 60-decimal system, the 60s system. 3,600 by 24 equals 8,000, okay? And that's it, the time that light travels in a year. Alright, you got all that? Good stuff. So, light can travel 587 quadrillion miles in a year, alright? And that's only a step.
that's a light year.
That's a step in the direction. It's crazy. I mean, that's immense. That's mind-blowing. These figures are just way up there, aren't they? So whatever happened, if I've all that purpose and stuff out there, there's got to be somebody big behind it. I think even at the basic level, our concept of God, I know we see God most clearly in his humanity in Jesus, but behind Jesus is God the Creator. And involved with Jesus is Jesus, as he was the Word at the beginning, as Creator. That's the kind of guys we're dealing with. That's the ones who love us, who's prepared to bleed and die for us. Brilliant Creator. There's all sorts of stuff when you look at the way things are for life being here upon Earth. 1 in 1,000 on the universe. Some people they spent billions looking for some other planet that could be inhabitable with some form of life force. So when they look at our planet, they look at the uniqueness of it. The fact that we're here at all almost denies believability. But we're here. I know you're here. Therefore, look at the uniqueness of our being here. The right kind of galaxy, 1 in 1,000 universe. Right kind of star, 1 in 1 billion in accepted galaxies. right kind of solar system, 1 in 1 billion in accepted stars, right kind of planet, 1 in 10 billion in acceptable solar systems. Our particular location in the universe is quite special. Its many features are going to be just right for us to exist as we are today. In his book, 1995 edition, Hugh Ross, in The Creator and the Cosmos, he lists over 33 things that are drawn from scientific literature to show how unique and special we are. And when we come back, what shift am I on next week, Kenny?
It'll be on night shift, won't it?
Day shift.
Day shift, night
And then
shift.
I'm going to show you a little film. It backs up this, okay, so it should be hopefully interesting, alright? Anyway, so you remember all this for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, he says, temperature. It varies from place to place on Earth. Few above boiling, some below freezing. A contrast. Venus 900 degrees or 500 degrees centigrade. Mars barely gets above freezing in midsummer at the equator. Earth is warm enough for water to be liquid, cool enough not to destroy biomolecules. Much water is needed to support life, although few organisms have techniques to conserve it and can live in arid regions. In fact, did you hear the news today? After 400 years of being covered by ice, as a little, it's like a lichen or a moss type of thing.
Permafrost.
It's coming back to life. After in a glacier, it's been covered since the last mini ice age. That's 400 years ago. Well, anyway, 400 years ago, this whole thing was covered by a glacier, and they thought, yeah, anything it's been under, you think they imagine it, the weight pressures, never mind anything else, and then the fact has been cut off from light for 400 years, because the glacier slowly moved back. They were walking along the edge of it, and there was this green thing growing there. After 400 years, it's come back to life. And it's amazing stuff, because you only need a leaf or something to survive of the whole plant. A leaf or a stem or something, and give it the right conditions and it comes back to life. It's one of those things that you can dry it right out and you can freeze it and also, but 400 years, that's a massive time, and it's come back to life. They reckon there's going to be more stuff that's going to come back. That's interesting, isn't it? That's hot off the press today. Okay. How much water? Water on Venus and Mars is infinitesimal by comparison. Earth's water is also concentrated on the surface, which is odd. Atmosphere. Balance of oxygen and the earth gases. A few percent less oxygen, animals can't breathe. Few more oxygen, plants burn up. Mars and Venus, virtually no free oxygen. Mass. If the Earth was a quarter as massive, atmospheric pressure would be too low for life. If the Earth was twice as massive, atmospheric pressure would be too high, producing a greenhouse effect and killing all life. The right moon, size and distance. Our moon is unique in the solar system, by far the largest compared with the planet. If it was smaller or further away, Earth's climate would be unstable, tides too small for mixing. If it were longer or closer, larger or closer, tidal effects on Earth's rotation, ocean and atmosphere would be just too much. We couldn't sustain life in it. The right moon and the Earth's crust. If the Earth's crust was thicker, it would eat up the atmospheric oxygen. If the Earth's crust was thinner, too much volcanism and plate movement would be difficult to survive. Your house would be in trouble. The right sun, character, mass in the right range, heavier, luminosity changes too quickly, lighter, life zone would be too narrow, tides would be too large. Temperature in the right range is redder, it'd be insufficient photosynthesis, bluer, same thing again, and the sun's radiation is just right, but our atmosphere is transparent. So it's, you know, it's everything just spot on. Right sun location, right distance away. Type of galaxy, it's a spiral galaxy, it produces stars over much of its history. Not an elliptical where star formation ends before there are many heavy elements. Not an irregular where the radiation effects will destroy life. Right planet, our place in the universe. Right planet, temperature, water, atmosphere and mass. Right moon, size, distance, Earth crust. Right sun, character and location, and right galaxy.
Will
If
you
you
go
can't,
through
if
that
you
again,
are,
Graham?
right?
Will you go through all that again?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you were to calculate it,
Yeah.
mathematically, and you're going to see this in a couple of other slides later on,
Oh, dear.
when you look at mathematical probabilities of some things, the probabilities for all these things being the right place at the right time just defies belief. Okay? Ross calculates probably instant getting his 32 items in the right range as 1 chance in 1053. What does this mean for the chance of finding an Earth-like planet? Surely not more than 10 planets per star, if so only 1024 planets in the Hubble volume. And then 1 chance in 1029 of getting one such planet in the universe. Our place in the universe appears to be telling us something.
Oh.
Galaxy moving through space at 600,000 miles per hour. Orbits the sun 70,000 miles per hour. Varying a ninth of an inch every 18 miles. Do you see something? It's consistency. It varies a ninth of an inch. I don't know what that's in metric. I should really convert it into metric these days, shouldn't I? Every 18 miles.
Nearly a mile.
Rotates 1,000 miles per hour. Tilt and revolution. The x-axis is not orientated vertically. It's tilted by 23.5 degrees. The north end of the axis is always pointing towards the North Star as the Earth revolves around the Sun. This tilt combined with the revolution around the Sun causes seasonal changes. When it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's winter in the southern and vice versa. If the axis was not tilted, our year-round climate would be rather boring, and many places on the Earth just wouldn't receive much light. But even now, certain parts of the world, you're talking about six months a year in darkness. You're not going to grow a great deal there, really. Right distance from the Sun, 93 million miles a year away. Right tilt, 23.5 degrees. Right size, surface, gravity, right atmosphere, right elements, water, right temperature, right crust. And it can go on and go on. Basically, it's saying we are unique. We are special. We are different. Is that just by chance, or is it by design? With the best intentions but limited by natural laws, it is unlikely that the Earth could ever truly be replicated. Too many processes in its formation involved sheer luck, chance.
Did you know that they've recently said that they've discovered 2 planets?
Yes, but one of the 2 moons.
10,000 light years away.
Yeah. I think something's going to pop over tomorrow.
Yeah, I seen the guys talking about, it could have this kind of light
Yeah.
form.
Yeah.
Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
No, it could have this, it could
Yeah.
have that.
Well, that's a favourite word actually, could have.
Yeah.
You'll see that in most of the writings, because they don't know. As a matter of fact, when you go back in 100 years ago, but even according to the Mormons, there were men living on, or people living on the moon, and the Mormons in their book, under divine revelation, described how they were dressed and everything. And now they weren't, and there was a religious group, but there was lots of other people who talked about when we reach the moon, we'll know, and we'll answer all the questions. We'll know where we come from. We'll know what the Earth is made of. We know everything about it. They got to the moon and so they said, it's got more questions than answers. We don't know a thing. And so then they think, well, that's too close. What about Mars? When we get to Mars, that's going to answer all the questions. And then got to Mars, that hasn't answered them. So now we're 10,000 million years away, or whatever, 9 years away. The thing is, they're so intent of finding something that can ditch God altogether, they're spending billions of pounds on looking for it, searching for the needle in the haystack. Instead of saying, look, we are really special. God must be really special. Let's just give in, because He's got the answers. We are, that's technically what we do. But too many processes in its formation involve sheer luck. This is something that varies a ninth of an inch every 18 miles. Just luck. Right water, right distances, right. To be able to say that, you've got to look at the facts. The Bible, for example, for an answer, in Hebrews chapter 3 says, "For every house is built by some man, but he that builds all things is God." When you see a house, we know there was an architect. When we see a painting, we know there was an artist. When we see a newspaper, we know there was a newspaper printer and an editor. Why can't we admit that when we look at man and the universe he lives in, that there's got to be a creator behind it all? It's common sense, isn't it? We draw these conclusions when we know that whatever there's a design, there must have been a designer. We kind of can see, for example, what's just happening with hundreds of parts working together in perfect position. There had to be a maker. You know, the more that understanding of it's crazy. There's a channel on the internet, a website. It's called www.ted.com. It's got some of the most cutting-edge scientists in all sorts of fields do a 10-minute talk on a specialist subject. It is absolutely pro-evolutionary in its thinking and its teaching. But the stuff, because they're on the cutting edge, the stuff that they're showing us about the inside the human body or any aspect of science is absolutely mind-blowing. There's a little motor, it's a motor inside the blood vessels in a human being. And when you eat a banana or eat anything to give it energy, the motor charges itself up and it goes off and you've got loads of energy. You ever felt some point in the day, suddenly get to that point, especially when you get older, and you suddenly get a point and go, you know, you're like, you've lost all energy. That's exactly what's happening. All these motors are going, I need more energy, boom, boom, and all closing down. And I'm doing that. That's rubbish. You can't see them. They're inside your blood vessels. But the motors, absolute magic. It just happened. When a baby's born, one valve opens and one valve closes. How many millions of years does it take for a baby to learn that if that valve doesn't open, you die, and if the other one doesn't close, you die? How many chances do you get at that? When your baby comes out from its mum's womb and the umbilical cord's still attached, when you cut that umbilical cord, the valves close. One-way valves close. And says, okay, I'm on my own from now on. If that doesn't happen, the baby dies. How many millions of years does it take to develop one valve opening and one valve closing? It just doesn't. It either works or doesn't work. Crazy. Amazing. Exactly the same reason we know there's a God. That which has been caused in the universe bears unmistakable evidence of intelligence or mind. When we see the heavenly bodies move with such precision that astronomers can predict hundreds of years in advance where a given celestial body will be at a given time, we know there's got to be a supreme intelligence behind it all. When we consider how the balance in nature between plant and animal worlds is sustained from one generation to another, we know there's a God because mere chance can't offer an explanation. And when we think of the miraculous reproduction system found in every form of life, we know there's going to be a first supreme designer. I always had a problem with Acts chapter 17. Part of it says that there's boundaries and stuff is best kept within those boundaries. And I struggle with that. And yet the more we learn about the world we live in, if we take, for example, what we did when we went to Australia, for food we thought it would be very clever to bring some rabbits. And now, a couple of hundred years later, they're building fences really deep and really not so high to try and hold back the rabbit population because they've gone berserk, because they've got no natural predator of rabbits out there in that sense. We've got in this country, introduced about 10 years ago, there's a worm. It's a flatworm. Probably brought in by people who want to do fishing. Thought they were clever. And this flatworm is a really powerful worm. What it does is it goes alongside our natural worms in our country and it literally absorbs the body of our natural worm, and where it does that, because its lifestyle is different, it doesn't do to the soil what our worms do. Good growing land, turns into a marsh. It turns into infertile land. And they're really worried about it in some parts of Scotland, in some parts of Wales. Literally good growing land, which was good 10, 15 years ago, is now almost uncultivatable because the worm population has been taken over by this fauna. There's loads of stuff happening like that. We introduce stuff into a different climate, and suddenly, instead of it being a benefit to our climate, it takes over because it's got no natural predator. How do these things evolve and yet live together in harmony long enough to survive to become what they are today?
The passage in Acts 17
Deal with
is that the
human
one that God hath made of one all the nations of the earth to dwell together upon the face of the earth, and has appointed unto them the bounds of their habitation. I don't have any difficulty with that. I can accept that. I think this business of nations all living together in one jumbled mass, I don't think it's biblical. I believe God intends us to be separate in some ways. I have difficulty with Revelation 21. I saw new heavens and a new earth.
Yep.
Because the old heavens and the first heavens and the first earth have passed away. So somewhere out there, even though I'm a Christian, I must believe there's a possibility of some life.
Well, okay, there's another aspect.
You know.
Yeah, there's an aspect to that, because a lot of people...
going there.
A lot of people...
John says, Peter says in 2 Peter 3, and he says that the heavens and earth have passed away. We, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness.
Yeah. See,
We've got to go somewhere.
the principle behind a lot of evolutionary thinking is there's got to be...
Physical somewhere.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
you want to have a physical body.
Yeah. I don't know.
1 Corinthians 15 says there is a physical body and there's a spiritual. It's not yet. You won't have a body that's capable of dying, for example.
You won't be your Scotch pie or your pie supper. But there's a lot of, when people say to us, there's got to be somebody out there.
So must be.
We are the first people, and have been saying for years, there is somebody out there. We call him God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus, before he became Jesus, lived somewhere, was somewhere in the universe.
Yeah.
Universe. Okay? So, when we talk about aliens, aliens are coming. Well, who is Jesus? He was an alien.
That's right.
He was the original alien. I've got no problem with those guys.
And the scriptures say that when he comes, the dead in Christ shall rise first, we who are alive and remain, shall be caught up together with them there to be with the Lord, thus shall we be present with them. Now, you've got to be somewhere.
Yeah, see?
I have problems with that, I bet you just said.
Yeah.
I always have problems. The dead in Christ shall
rise first.
So, who are the dead?
The dead in Christ. The ones who died, that we've gone with, who have
Are
died
they
in
already
Christ.
gone?
Eh?
Are they not already gone? Or
Well,
are they still lying?
but this is not the subject.
This up anyway. Ultimately, we'll come down to and this is maybe, someone's written, if the word God were written upon every blowing leaf, embossed on every passing cloud, engraved in every granite rock, the inductive evidence, what you find, what you see, is that God is in the world. It wouldn't be any stronger than the evidence we have today. So when you pick out, when you look at a beautiful little flower, when you look at this time of year, the gloriousness of trees. I love trees. As we're driving along, I somebody said, Terry, look at that tree, and he says, yes,
Tree
good.
hugger.
It's green.
We have the same appreciation, yeah. But, I think they're magic, they're wonderful. But behind all that is a God who loves us, who created everything for us, to sustain us.
Lord Kelvin said every atom can be proved to be a manufactured article.
Yeah, it's interesting. With the human intellect thinks in terms of finality, the word has its premise.
Who's the manufacturer?
God.
God. Therefore, okay, there you go. Universe is a big advertising poster and it spells God. Okay? Made the world and everything in it, Lord of heaven and earth, doesn't dwell in temples made with hands, not worshipped with men's hands, made from one blood every nation of men, determined man's times and boundaries. He's not far from each one of us. Beautiful statement by Paul. In him we live and move and have our very being.
Yeah.
That's, we live and move by the power of God, by the awesomeness of God, by the presence of God. We are special people, the God we serve.
Well, that denies evolution, doesn't it? God made of one. They've put the word blood in, it's God made of one,
But
all the nations of the earth.
I'm going to come back to that in a couple of weeks' time. But they've done some big stuff with blood, and shown that instead of a whole bunch of different evolutionary developments, there's a common source. You can check the impurities in blood and follow it into different nations and stuff. It's very interesting stuff. To the God we serve. Truly these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent, because he has appointed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man who has it ordained. He has given us assurance of this to all by raising him from the dead. Okay.